Yes, so I'm going to talk a little bit about addresses, and this is something that we take for granted in the world, and we actually get very used to the problems with addresses and how actually they're not very good. And there are various reasons for this, but the key thing here is that the world has changed. So the way that we travel, the way that we move, the way that we order things online has changed. I get to go on a plane and I can be in Tokyo in half a day or a day, and I can explore it and I can discover new things on my own because I have a phone and I can use it to navigate me around. And I can take pictures of things and put them on Instagram, and I can order an Uber to be with me in 2 minutes, or a My Taxi, or a pizza. And the whole system of how things and people move around the world has totally shifted in the last 20 or 30 years, and particularly in some parts of the world, so one of those parts of the world being China. If anyone has spent much time in China, they will know how things have shifted even more there. So one thing I see in China is this, what this lady's doing here, which is people talking to their devices. I was there last week. People spend a lot of time talking, not typing. So China's a little bit ahead of us on this one. They've started using voice. So lots of things have changed in the world, the way we order stuff, the way we move, the way we talk to our machines, and they're going to change more. So robots are becoming a thing. We hear a lot at places like this about autonomous vehicles and drone deliveries and robo-taxis. And the problem with all of this is that when you've had these changes, you've ended up with one thing: the address system that we use with all of these devices and these machines has stayed the same. So you're using an address system with your machines that was designed well before machines ever existed. And you end up with loads of problems. And one of the problems is that you end up not quite being able to trust your machine. And that's a problem because we've got very dependent on our machines. When I think about your GPS in your car, you type something in and you kind of trust it to take you to the right place. But actually, it's really easy for the machine to make a mistake, or for the human to make a mistake. One example would be this. So these are very common street names. Now, this is Acadia Drive and Acacia Drive. Now, C and D, very near to each other on a keyboard or a touchpad, very easy to make a typo and not notice that you've made a typo and drive to the wrong town in California, for example, because you've put this in your GPS. Sometimes it's not your fault. Sometimes this is actually a real-life example from my life, which was outside of Stuttgart. I was trying to stay at Pliningerstraße, number 30, and unfortunately, I showed up at an Airbnb at number 30 Pliningerstraße, and it turns out there were two of those very close to each other, and I surprised a person who was not expecting an Airbnb guest. So that's very frustrating that you have problems like this, which this is not my fault. I put in an address. It just happens to be the same address in the same area. So that's frustrating. Then you think about how many times you've come to a venue like this. You might have a very large building and one postal address. So if I go to Harrods in London, I look that up, I get a pin in the middle of the building. Now that might be great if I'm a helicopter landing on the top of the building, but if what I'm trying to do is find the entrance or the exit or the place that Uber might pick me up, that's frustrating. And there are lots of places that don't even have addresses. So I've used things like Airbnb a lot and basically discovered the more beautiful a place is, the less likely it is to have an address. Halfway up a mountain, hidden in a forest, doesn't have an address. So there are lots of problems with the addressing system. And when we come to think about voice, these all get worse. So addresses were absolutely not designed for voice. Now, I'm an obsessive voice user. I have an Alexa and a Google Home. I use Siri all the time with my phone to dictate emails and all sorts of things. The problem is, voice doesn't always work perfectly. And this makes me laugh, this tweet. So, Alexa, can you turn the porch lights on, please? And Alexa replies, you don't have a Porsche. So I've turned on the duster lights instead. Now, this makes us smile because we're used to this. We're used to our voice devices misunderstanding us. We're used to asking, putting something on the shopping list and it not being the thing that you said. You're used to getting in your car and saying, turn up the music, and it turns on the heating. And all kinds of things happen with voice control. And it's getting better. It's getting better all the time. But it's not perfect. And when you're getting in your car, and you're expected to be using your voice to tell your car where you're going, or when you're sitting at home and you're trying to order your Uber or your My Taxi with your voice, you really want it to be right? You don't want to get in the car and drive to the wrong place. You don't want your taxi to take you to the wrong place. And addresses and voice are just a very bad mixture. This is one example of this from London. So this top one is Lawn Road, and this bottom one is Lawn Road. They're spelled differently, but you say them exactly the same. So how is Alexa meant to know when I say take me to 17 Lawn Road, which of those I mean? If I haven't got a screen, I can't choose from the options. What is it? It's just going to guess? Do you really want your machines that are driving you around guessing where you're going? This is an example. All over the US, there are examples like this. So 241st Street and 241st Street. Again, very close together, very easy to go to the wrong place. And that even assumes you know how to say something. Now, I know how to say Worcestershire, because I'm from the UK, but in the UK we're very good at having all kinds of complicated pronunciations that don't look anything like the way that things are written. So Worcestershire is how you say this, but you'd be very much forgiven if you didn't know how to say that. So if you're programming voice technology into your car, maybe so you have to put in the real pronunciation, Worcestershire. Should you also put in maybe Worcestershire, just in case someone thinks that's how it's said? And what would you do with accents? And you end up with this huge list of variables. And so there are too many things you're trying to program in to just explain where you want to go. And if we look at China, where voice is really prevalent, voice is so far ahead in China, and Chinese consumers are already leading the way on this, but 50% of Chinese drivers are seeing their in-car nav as outdated. And voice is a really frustrating experience for navigation. You might have fantastic navigation systems in the cars these days. Voice is frustrating. And you know what people do? They stop trying and they go back to using their phone. And these amazing head units, which have been designed very expensively with extensive R&D, people are not using them to navigate with voice because addresses are so bad. And again, taking away the screen, if we're talking about hands-free experiences, if we're talking about experiences where you're not, stopping driving and scrolling and looking through a list, we need something better. So at What 3 Words, we decided it was time for something better. Now, there is a global addressing system, and it looks like this. So there is a global addressing system, GPS coordinates. With a GPS coordinate, I can tell you the particular entrance to this building, the spot on the beach for my yoga class. I can tell you anywhere in the world. If I go to Japan, it works in the same way. The problem with this is nobody is going around saying, meet me at 25 degrees, 9 minutes, 40.918, etc. Right? Nobody's doing strings of 16-digit numbers to each other. So we wanted to take the power of GPS coordinates and make them work for voice. So make them work for human beings to communicate with other human beings and with machines. So what we did is we took the entire world, we divided it into a grid. This is a grid of 57 trillion squares. Each square is 3 meters by 3 meters, really, really small. And every single one has been labeled with an address made of 3 words from the dictionary. So I can say, meet me at Thread Strollers Bumble. That is a completely unique address, one of 57 trillion. So if you want to get a delivery to that house in Germany, you give those 3 words, and that is all the information anybody needs to get to your front door. You don't need a postcode, you don't need any more information, you don't need the country. That is a completely unique address. So every entrance in the world has its own address. Every entrance to this stadium you can see, every car parking space. I can say, yes, I'm going to park the car at Spicy Float Monday or Pirate Gather Daisy. So everywhere in the world has one of these addresses. Behind the scenes, this is a GPS coordinate. This is a GPS coordinate that we've turned into words. And this means that a machine, sure, the machine's going to read it as a GPS coordinate, but the human can input it. And the human can say, hey, I'm getting married. The parking space of where you might park your car is at, pictured pheasant's handball. So that's the idea. Now, we've not just done this in English. We've done this in over 35 other languages as well. So you can use this in the language that you speak. If you are a German tourist going to the Japan Olympics next year, you could use German 3-word addresses in Tokyo. You could say to your Airbnb host, can you give me the 3-word address in German? They'll send it to you and you can show up. Now, anyone who's tried to navigate around Japan, if you can't read Japanese, will know how hard that is. So we've solved that problem. And one of the interesting things recently was we just launched Chinese. So this is what a 3-word address looks like in Chinese. As you can imagine, it's been received very well in China, where voice is really taking off. And if you're in Germany, you can use it to, meet somebody for a date on a bench in Berlin. That's a 3-word address of a particular bench in Berlin here. So this is just like a normal address. It's just more accurate, and it's designed for voice. So it's a much, much better user experience. And increasingly, you can use this just like a normal address. So Mercedes became the first car company last year to put 3-word addresses, 3-word address functionality into the cars. So Mercedes cars now, as part of the MBUX system, you can get in, you say, hey Mercedes, you give it a 3-word address, and you know you'll end up in the right place. I can actually show you what that looks like in this case. Hey Mercedes.
How may I help you?
What 3 words? Glass, keys, rooftop.
Select an entry, please.
Number 1.
The route is being calculated.
And that's it.
Follow the road for 700 meters.
That's all you need to do. You say 3 words and you know you're going to the exact 3 meter by 3 meter square that you have specified. Other car companies are doing this too. So as a part of a rollout of Ford, certain Ford vehicles can use this through the app on their phone. You can use this in all kinds of ways, whether it's ride-hailing apps, navigation apps, hiking apps, just like a normal address. The aim for What 3 Words is to become a global standard. So when you get that wedding invitation and it says apple, cabbages, dragonfly, you understand what that means. That's an address. That's telling you exactly where you should show up. And so somebody like me, discovering the world, taking photos, putting them on Instagram, in the future, when I order something online, there will be a little box that says what 3 words, and you can put in your 3-word address. When I'm telling somebody the best place for coffee in Stuttgart, I can give a 3-word address. Or when my Airbnb host, this is a real Airbnb host, who gives the 3-word address of their place in Portugal. I think that's Portugal. So this is becoming part of the world, and people are using this in all kinds of ways. But the interesting thing for me to talk about here around this conference, we're talking about shifting things and change. And we actually have a team of just over 100 now. This is our team in London. And we're tackling a bit of a big mission, right? We're trying to fundamentally change human behavior. We're trying to say it's going to become normal to give a 3-word address and people to use it. And in order to do that, we have to work with big companies. And in auto world, very big companies. And that has been a very interesting learning experience for us. So auto companies are a bit like tankers. This was actually somebody inside an auto company who was telling me this recently. So they're very powerful. They take a very long time to shift, to move. They're not like little speedboats that can zip around like startups where you can just change and the next day everything's changed. They take a really, really long time to move. And I remember that one of the first phone calls I had with a car company. Now, we're in the software space. We're in London. At this point, there's probably 10 or 12 of us in the whole company. And on the phone to this car company, they said, we love this. This is about 2015. We love this. We're going to put it in the car, absolutely. Really excited. We'll do it quite quickly. And I said, fantastic. Are we talking weeks? And of course, what they said is, oh, no, by 2020. And for me, I'm like, wait, 2020, the year 2020? And that has been the really interesting learning for us, is that this is a piece of technology. This is software. You can build this into a car very, very quickly. You're talking hours or weeks, not months. But you're working with big companies. And the only way that you can do that, so that you can shift behavior away from doing things very carefully and slowly, which is very important in lots of bits of the world, but in terms of software like this, you can build this quickly, you can deploy it quickly. So how have we done that? How have we worked with these huge car companies and got them changing things? And actually, the answer is always people. So the answer is always people like this and people like this. So this is actually a bit of a snapshot of our Mercedes team. You can see, so this group just at the top here, that was actually 2 years ago, pretty much, exactly, at the IAA, where we first announced that What 3 Words was coming to Mercedes. And this group of people were change makers within their organizations. They were groups of people, and yes, sometimes they're people called Dieter or Ola, and sometimes they're people called Tony and Dennis and Nihat and Jennifer. And these are not necessarily people that you have all heard of, but they are people who, inside these huge organizations, are saying, I want to change things. I am not satisfied with poor user experience. It's frustrating that we've designed amazing head units that nobody actually uses with their voice, and they want to change things. And that's been our whole experience, which is that you find the right people, even in these huge tankers of organizations, and they can make things happen for you. Although sometimes they do have to battle bureaucracy. One of my favorite moments was during a car deal we did a couple of years ago. We had our office looked something like this. You kind of got laptops and maybe a couple of plants, but not very much. And we were doing a contract with a big automotive company, and they said, could you fax us the contract? No, is the answer. I don't think I've even seen a fax machine. And I think eventually we had to run around London and find a friend who had a fax machine so we could fax this contract. So sometimes you still have to battle things like that, but if you've got the right people, they take you by the hand, they help you problem solve the fax machine, and they help find a way through it. But this needs to happen more. I'm hanging out in China a lot right now, and to be honest, China's ahead on a lot of this stuff. The Chinese companies are able to build things incredibly fast. We launched in Shanghai at the auto show in April this year. We've already done multiple deals with Chinese car companies. We've got Chinese car companies going live with cars with What 3 Words within a very, very short space of time. There are companies out there who can innovate quickly, and if this side of the world in the West, we don't start innovating quicker, we're going to get left behind. So this has been a really, really interesting experience for us, is learning over these last few years how to work with these big companies. And just to finish on that, these amazing people in these companies that help you change things, sometimes they're changing a little bit more than just the experience in the car or the experience of me navigating somewhere. One of the most amazing things with What 3 Words over the last few years has been seeing how people use it actually to literally save lives. So in the UK at the moment, a lot of our emergency services in the UK are using What 3 Words. And a couple of weeks ago, this article came out in the BBC, What 3 Words, the app that can save your life. Now, if you imagine you're in a car accident, for example, you might be on the side of a road you've never heard of. You don't really know where you are. How do you explain to the fire service, to the ambulance, where exactly you are? And having seen over the last few months, emergency services in the UK, but elsewhere too, adopt What 3 Words has been really powerful. So those people who helped us put it in Mercedes cars or Ford cars or ride-hailing apps like Cabify, they've actually been part of something much, much bigger. And this is something that's having an impact every day. And pretty much every day at the moment, we see amazing stories like this. People tweeting and sharing stories. This bottom one, just use What 3 Words for the first time while on a live 999 call for East England Ambulance. The patient was in the middle of the field, but the app worked a treat. I was able to find the exact location in the field. What an incredible life-saving app. So that's something that's been really powerful. Sometimes you change more than just one thing, more than just the organization you're working in. And I actually wanted to show you quickly, this is a recording we got sent, I think, 2 weeks ago in the UK of somebody reporting, I think, a fire with a 3-word address. If I can get it to play. No? No. Okay, there was a recording of somebody, and he basically phoned up, and he said, I'm in the middle of a field, and there's a fire, and the person on the call said to him, she said, do you have the What 3 Words app? And he said, oh my gosh, yes, I downloaded it today. And he downloaded it because he saw that BBC article. There we go.
Running, and there's basically a wood on fire.
Do you use the app What 3 Words?
I do. Don't ironically. Hold on.
What's your nearest town?
Blenheim in Bedfordshire.
Blenheim, okay.
Yeah. I'm literally in a field. Right, so my located 3 words are loving, paddlers and bookshelf.
Okay, let's have a look. So loving, paddlers and bookshelf.
Yeah.
Okay, right, so I've got you now. So I think the nearest main road to you is probably the Tempsford Road that goes over the little humpback bridge with the lights.
Exactly, yeah. I'm parked just along from that, actually.
Okay, all right. I'm going to get them to come out to there, and then they should be able to see it.
Yeah, they'll see the smoke.
Okay, that's brilliant, and thank you. And thank you for using the app. That's really helpful. Thanks. Bye.
And that's it, 3 words, and they know exactly where the person is who needs help. So that's been the incredible journey that we've been on. We've got to explore the world, and if you now know about What 3 Words, and if you spot things like this, you spot these 3 slashes, and then the address. This is actually a bus stop in Mongolia, in the capital city of Mongolia, Ulaanbaatar. That's a 3-word address in Mongolian and one in English. This is actually an art gallery where they put their 3-word address both as the address, and it's actually the name of the art gallery. They ended up naming it after the 3-word address. And even here in Berlin, you've got Potsdamer Platz. If you go to Potsdamer Platz and see Deutsche Bahn's HQ, you'll see the 3-word address in German on their window. So now you're in the club, you know what it is, and you understand the power of What 3 Words.